I'm gonna give you a little tip. I'm gonna give you some insight into the church. There's this thing called guilt, and we're really good at it. I mean, we're really good at the guilt thing. But it's not long-term change, if you know what I mean. Guilt is short-term. It makes you feel bad. You do something in the short term, but the long term, it's not there. And so instead of doing guilt, what we try to do now is to talk about principles, values, things that we want to live by, how we want to live our lives. And I want to tell you that I think our Stewardship Committee has done a superb job this year, and they're not done. They're just getting started. Sandra Jones and Mandy Taylor Montoya and Steve Turry and Nancy McMillan are working really hard to raise our consciousness about stewardship, our responsibility in serving God and serving God's people. And obviously, one aspect of stewardship is money. And so, as Father Wally already told you, at the offering today, we're going to have a well out here, digging deep wells so others may drink. That's our vision. And we're going to invite you to come forward. If you have a pledge to give for 2016, we want you to put it in that bucket. If you have your offering for today, just put that offering in there. If you don't have anything, well, we've got envelopes in there, and we don't have to, you can just write something in there and say, blessings to St. Andrew's, and you can put it in there too, and nobody will know the difference, okay? So everything's covered. But what we want to see is the people of God coming forward in this aspect of stewardship. But there are other aspects of stewardship also. For example, one of the things that we're trying to drive home in each and every one of us is the realization that each one of us is a minister. For the sheer sake of your baptism, you are a minister, and your ministry usually takes place outside of these walls. Some of you have ministry here because sometimes it's necessary to have ministry here to prepare others to go out into the world. So what you do tells people something about your relationship to Jesus. I'm not just talking behavior. I'm talking about your willingness to engage in the world as a minister. Start thinking of yourself not simply as a worker, not as an employee, but as someone who engages in the world. And you have been empowered to be ministers in the world. That's stewardship. That's stewardship of your gifts. And what we're trying to do is to bless those and confer, if you will, on you this title minister, so that you can go out and be the Christian worker bees that Jesus wants you to be, okay? There's another aspect of stewardship that I'll bet you've never thought about, because I never thought about it. But what about preparing for death? I know, it's kind of a strange stewardship, isn't it? But we're participating, St. Andrew's is participating in something really big. It's called the conversation. And the conversation is all about death and dying wishes. I mean, you begin to have the conversation with family and friends about your wishes for end of life. And I think that's good stewardship. So we're participating in a big picture event. Basically, we're going to be having at St. Andrew's, like many other churches, we're having it all over the country. We're going to be having a panel discussion. And we're going to have Dr. Okoli here, who will talk about, from a physician's point of view, one who tries to save lives, at some point has to release that. We're going to have an attorney who deals specifically with end-of-life issues. And we're going to have hospice here, and I think there's going to be somebody else here also. Oh, Wally, I'm sorry. Father Wally will be there too to talk about the spiritual aspects of death and dying. So we're going to have this panel discussion to talk about it. But today today is set apart as Sabbath conversation, which means that there are many people in many different churches, in many different worship settings who are talking about the conversation of death. Now I'm going to tell you something right up front. Mary Jo keeps pushing me, and I have not had the conversation with her because I'm invincible. And young, that's right. And a goatee. And so those kinds of things, I haven't had this conversation, and she's been pushing me. The only thing I've told her is I want 5 psalms, my favorite 5 psalms in the service. But it's probably not going to happen. She'll have to choose 2 of those 5. But I haven't said anything else beyond that. I was thinking the other day about Lee May, a dear parishioner who died a couple months ago. And it was a tragic death in that nobody knew about her in her trailer for 3 days. And then we had Margaret McLaughlin, one of our parishioners, go there, and Deacon Ann followed after that. And we got the ball rolling. And you know what happens when someone dies? Lots of people have to be notified. And so her sons came in, her 3 sons came in to Las Cruces, and they started to ask the question, well, I guess we need to do a funeral. And so they called us at the church, and we went to her flock folder. You want to know something? We have a folder on you. And so we opened up the folder, and there wasn't anything in there for Lee. Everything was there for her husband, Carrie. And so we had to kind of start at the base level. Okay, what are we going to do? Well, one of her sons was going through a stack of papers and came across 2 pieces of paper that had in detail all of her wishes for a funeral. It was fabulous. She said, I want right 1 burial, right 1 communion service. She had all 3 of her readings plus the Psalms. Then she put down who she wanted to read, which was really helpful. Then she had her hymns down. So we had all the hymns right there, and it was slick. We just did everything that she wanted right there. And right down in the bottom in the memo it says, and Father Scott, you better preach a good sermon. So she dictated everything that she wanted right to the very end. And that's part of what dealing with end-of-life issues means for us in this concept, in this setting, is that you begin to think through what you would like at your funeral. And some of you are saying, look, I'm not old enough to be dealing with this. And yet you and I know that life needs to be held like a butterfly because it is really fragile and we never quite know. So to jumpstart this kind of thinking is probably helpful, and I think it's good stewardship. On the website for the conversation, one guy is quoted to have said, you know what I want for end of life? I want all the chocolate ice cream I can eat, and I want to sit and watch football on TV. That was his end of life wishes, and he told them to his family, and when it happens, I'll bet that's what happens. Another younger lady, a very young lady said, you know what I would like when I die? That I still remember the names of my kids. So she was already thinking about what that might look like and what might happen in her life. 90%, the stats on the website say that 90% say that it's a good idea to do this, and only 30% ever follow through with making arrangements. And this is probably the hardest thing for us to do in general, and that is simply jump-starting the conversation with somebody in your family. Is going ahead and saying, well, what are your wishes for end of life? Or you saying, hey, look, this is what I want when that time comes. And then to take it from your head and put it on paper and give it to us to put it in your flock folder so that we have a record of your wishes so that we can comply with that. And why not have the end-of-life discussions with your doctors? Not all doctors can go there. Not all doctors can understand that at some point you have to let go. But they should. And that's why we're going to have Dr. Okoli here to say, you know what, this is how a doctor can help you as you start moving into those end-of-life decisions that you may need to make. So we have stewardship. We have stewardship that is about money. We have stewardship that's about gifts. And we also have stewardship which is about taking care of business at home before it happens. And I think it's the wise thing to do. And so I'm simply going to leave you with this. Please have the conversation. Amen.